going on, Straight Talk Faithful? Your host, George Macrae, back again in the studio, pre-recorded, with another fantastic wrestler in-house. I'm excited to talk to this young gentleman. He is coming up very quickly in the ranks. I actually did get to see him. He may not realize, but I did get to see him at Chinlock back on Father's Day weekend, Chinlock 5. I got to see him in the Rumble. We'll talk about that a little later. But I'm not going to waste any time. Let's welcome the hot stepper, Martin Macrae, to Straight Talk Wrestling. How are you, sir?
I am very good, George. I will start off by saying it is actually Macrae Martin.
Oh,
A common misconception.
My apologies, Macrae Martin. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. If I had $1 for every time someone flipped my name around, I'd be a very rich man.
You probably would be. You just made like $2 off me, so you're already ahead of the game. So, Macrae, this is always my standard question. If you've listened to the show, you already know where I'm going with this. I like to call this question the defining moment. This is where I ask you how you fell in love with this crazy business that we're going to be talking about today.
I knew that question was coming. I am an avid listener of Straight Talk Wrestling. So for me, it started with one of my best friends. He had one of the Raw versus SmackDown video games, and that was kind of my introduction to it. And when I started watching it, I remember coming home from hockey, and I turned on the TV, and Monday Night Raw just happened to be on, and in the ring was John Cena and The Rock, and they had made their announcement for the WrestleMania 28 match. And shortly after that, the Core, the faction at the time, came out, and they hit the signature moves, the five-knuckle shuffle, the AA, rock bottom, people's elbow, you know the drill. And I remember after they laid out the faction, and they were just staring each other down, and that really captivated me. That just, you could feel the energy from the crowd, from the two individuals in the ring. And from there, I was an avid watcher every single Monday and Friday night.
Wow, that's one hell of a moment. I mean, I remember that match. There was such a build. There was like a good 4 or 5 month build for that match, and you don't see that much anymore in this day and age. It's very hard to get those builds because there really is so much forms to watch now, and we'll get into that a little bit later because I'm interested in your opinion. But I definitely love the moment, and I myself, I've been a fan of this business since I was knee high to a spit. So I can't say anything, but yeah, that's one heck of a moment. And those are two legends to captivate you like that. It's you can see why everyone who loves this business loves it. It's moments like that count and matter. So you saw that moment, you fell in love with it, you became an avid watcher. When did you decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step into the ring. I'm going to go for training. And who did you start training with?
So I would say shortly after I started watching, I think as most kids do, they wanted to be a part of it. And I knew from when I basically started watching, I wanted to start wrestling. And so I started my training July of 2018, so last year. And I started with the IWS dojo in Montreal. And I did a few sessions. It was sometimes difficult living 2 hours away in Ottawa, trying to make the trip multiple times a week. But shortly after, the Keep opened, a school that's run by Evil Uno and Stu Grayson right here in my hometown. So what turned into a 2-hour drive became half an hour, and the switch was pretty obvious. And I've been with the Keep ever since. And they've really helped mold me into the wrestler I am today.
So when you, again, this is, if you're an avid listener, you already know my next question. You got to tell me your reaction to the first bump. I mean, getting in there, I'm always, because I've never stepped in a ring myself, and I want to take a bump, and I'm hoping one day I get the opportunity to take a bump. I don't want to get into the ring full time, because I just love talking and interviewing wrestlers, and I just like talking the business in general. But I got to experience at one point or not. So you got to tell me, man, what was the reaction to falling back for the first time?
It was definitely a shock to the system, that's for sure. I think for the people who are around me, when I took my first bump, they really hyped it up to make it seem worse than it actually was. So when I took the bump, it was a bit of a shock, but, you know, it didn't stop me from wrestling. And I've taken many bumps since then. And, you know, you just got to make sure as much surface area is hitting that mat and you'll be fine. I do love seeing the reaction from my friends. They ask me that same question, like, what's it like to bump in the ring? And your body's not supposed to want to fall. And when I tell them that I'm falling onto thin padding, wood, and steel, they just have this dumbfounded look on their face, thinking that I'm quite the crazy gentleman. But, you know, it's a weird love, wrestling.
No, it is. I mean, if you love it, you love it. If you don't know about it, then you don't appreciate it. And that's a lot of the things. That's why I love doing what I do, because I get to educate some people who may not, you know, understand this crazy business. So I actually, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I got to see you at Chinlock 5. I'm very good friends with Jan Murphy, who runs all of Chinlock. And I got to see you in that Rumble match that they had. I mean, the outcome didn't go your way, but you lasted quite decently. And when I saw you, I did see something special. And I first off, I love the character. I love the name. I love the gimmick. I love the outfits. But I also loved the way you incorporated. I mean, I didn't notice it so much at the point, but the highlights and stuff that I've watched, you really do incorporate some of that breakdancing stuff into your in-ring style, which is great. So in terms of character development, when you were figuring out who you were going to represent, who was Macrae Martin going to be, was the Hot Stepper the first character that came to mind? Or did you kind of have to go through some, you know, peaks and valleys to figure out who you were going to represent, who you were going to be in that ring?
It's kind of a funny story. So, growing up and even while I started my training, a dancing character was actually something that I wanted to avoid. And that's just because how they've been portrayed on TV. They've always been put in a jobber scenario. They've never been taken seriously. You never will look at them and be like, oh, that's going to be a world champion someday. So it was kind of something I wanted to avoid it. But my debut literally came out of nowhere. Like, I found out I was wrestling less than 24 hours before I debuted. And in my mind, I was thinking, I need something right here, right now. Whatever I pick, it's got to stick. And so I remember driving to Montreal it was an IWS show, and I literally was just like, you know what? I'm going to be a dancer. I'm just going to use my real name. I don't have time to think of a fake name. And then I searched up dance names, and there was a group called the Hot Steppers. And I saw that, I was like, oh, the Hot Stepper, Macrae Martin, that's really cool. And so I used that moniker, and then the music came to me. Here Comes the Hot Stepper. I found that song. And after I wrestled my first match, I realized how much fun and easy it was to incorporate my dance into wrestling as well. I really could play around with it. I could go more comedy, but I could also go very serious and show off my athleticism. So, once I got to know wrestling a bit better, I realized that wrestling didn't just have to be serious. It's an entertainment business. So you play to your strengths, and you know, if the comedy gets a reaction, if my athleticism gets a reaction, you know, I might as well just use that and go with it. And the fact that I have 19 years of dancing experience under my belt, it just, you know, it's kind of like, I always look at it as I trained to be a dancer so I could become a wrestler.
I love that. I think that's a great outlook on things, and I'm impressed by that. I mean, considering you're still only a year into the business, that's wise knowledge, well beyond your capabilities right now. Just because you're only about a year and a half in. But you're right. You know what? To go back to the dancing characters for a second, you're right. I mean, there's two that come to mind. You've got Fandango, and you've got No Way Jose. Those are the two that kind of stick out in my mind right now. And you're right. They're both kind of played as jobbers. I mean, Fandango, impressive athlete, never really got the chance. They stuck him with Tyler Breeze with that whole Fashion Police thing. I thought that was a complete fiasco. And No Way Jose, I do like the conga line, but I know that if that guy's given the opportunity, he has some impressive impressive power and speed that he doesn't get to utilize. And you're right. I just did an episode about 3 episodes back from when yours is going to drop with Psycho Mike, and him and I talked in depth about the comedy wrestling, and it's a genre of wrestling that I love now that's getting kind of a semi-resurgence because you've got guys like Joey Ryan who are like the King of Dong style. I've seen him twice now at indie shows, and that stick is hilarious. You've got RJ City, the Peacock Dalton. They are Dalton Castle. And Psycho Mike, Cody Deaner from Impact. The list goes on and on and on. And the comedy wrestling, I feel, is something that's underutilized in this business today. And I really wish that promoters would give it more of a chance. So if you're advocating for, the dancing side of you plus the comedic side of you, bravo for that, man. Stick with that because, believe me, indie fans, wrestling fans, we appreciate the comedy aspect of it because it gives us a break from sometimes the over seriousness of it. And that's what wrestling fans, we really do gravitate towards. So kudos to you for the comedy wrestling. But I guess that brings my next question up. Do you feel as well that because your character, you've got the dance and you've got the comedy aspect kind of incorporated in it together, do you feel that the comedic wrestling should get more of a chance with promoters?
Absolutely, 100% agreed. All those people that you just listed off are huge inspirations for me just because they too especially got me into comedy wrestling. And, it's funny when I started looking at shows like this. When you look at a show, there's usually 9 matches. And the common misconception is that moves and spots is what gets you over. So you could watch a 9-match show and let's say 6 of those matches had dives. It's going to be very hard after the show when you walk out the building to remember who did which dive and, which got the biggest reaction or blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the times the dives are the same. But when you look at comedy wrestling, it really focuses on moments in the match. I'm going to use one of my matches, for example, just because it's easy. I wrestled Puff. It was myself versus Puff at a C4 Underground show. And, there was very little wrestling, as you can assume, when it's myself and Puff. But I had people keep telling me it wasn't the best wrestling match of the night, but it was the most memorable. And I had people coming up to me and I loved the shimmy spot that you did, or I love the tango spot that you did, or all these different moments that we had that are still talked about. And going back to one of the people you mentioned, Joey Ryan, when you have Joey Ryan on a show, literally you don't remember a single thing in that match besides someone grabbing his dick and getting flipped. So it's really, what I've discovered is that wrestling is more about the moments and what are people going to remember, not just about this big spot fest or, how many times you chop an opponent. It's really that character and story that you create is what captivates audiences and what they're going to walk away remembering.
You know what? You couldn't have said it any better yourself. You're right. If you look up the definition of wrestling in Webster's dictionary, it really should say moments. Because if you think about if I spout off any WrestleMania to you, you probably won't be able to remember a match full out, but you'll be able to remember a moment from those matches. Uh-huh. I mean, let's just do a little game for fun. Getting into it, so you've been watching for a while. You talked about WrestleMania 26. I'm assuming you watch WrestleMania every year. Let's talk last year's WrestleMania. You don't have to name a match, but can you recall a moment that made you go, man, that was sweet?
Kofi Kingston winning the WWE Championship. That was awesome, considering how much time they put into building it. Seth Rollins hitting Brock Lesnar in the dick. There's been a lot of dick talking on this podcast. I really love it.
There's been a lot of cock talk for sure, 100%.
Yeah. Cock talk, that's so good. But those are, I mean, I think those are two big moments. Oh, the first ever women's WrestleMania main event with Becky Lynch, Charlotte, and Ronda Rousey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think those are like the big ones that like really when you think about, well, when I think about WrestleMania 35, like those three specifically stick out for me.
No, 100%. Those are the three that obviously reign true for me too, because I myself, I have two daughters who I love to death, and I talk about them frequently on the show. And I love the fact that there's this huge, resurgence in women's wrestling, that women are breaking down barriers every day, and they're kicking ass, they're taking names. I say it all the time, but I'll preach it till the end of time. I love that, wrestling is the only kind of sport out there that is really pushing women to the forefront. And I just wish, and this segues so perfectly to my next question. See, Macrae, we're just fluid right now. We're fluid.
we're just going with the motion. I love it.
I love it. So this actually goes to my next question. In your short career thus far, have you had an intergender match yet? If you have, with who? If you haven't, is there a female wrestler on the indie scene that you would love to get into the ring with and work with if you had the opportunity?
So, I kind of had an intergender match. I'll explain. So, I was at one of my local promotions, Acclaim Pro Wrestling. It was myself, KL Shock, who you will have seen at Chinlock, Poly Platinum, and we wrestled #The Best and Jesse Mack. Now, Jesse Mack and I didn't have a lot of interaction between the two of us in the match, but I did dip her, and I went Mia Moore, and then I whipped her into Shock's arms, and then they started slow dancing. Wrestling's weird. But so that's as far as intergender goes, that's the closest I've come so far. As far as women's wrestlers I'd love to wrestle, Jessie Mack, I would love to have a match with her. Casey Spinelli is one.
My girl, Casey's both of them. I love both of them to death.
They're fantastic people. Rosemary would be an interesting one to wrestle, just because you have a dancing character versus a demonic character. I feel like there's some very interesting dynamics you could play with there. Let's see. There's a lot of great women's wrestlers out there. It's kind of hard to just pinpoint specific ones.
Right, but I think your short list right there was pretty epic. I mean, I've had so many conversations with Casey. Her and I consider her, one of my paisans. I mean, we share that recess bond. She's Spinelli. I'm definitely TJ Detweiler. I pride myself on that. I always got into all kinds of trouble. So I pride myself on that. And yeah, definitely Jessie Mack. I mean, I had a great conversation with her, and she is just, they're just sweethearts. But in the ring, they are beasts. They can literally break it down, tear you apart 20 different ways, and smile, that gorgeous smile that they both have. And all you want to do is just say, yeah, okay, you can hurt me some more. I'm okay with that. I'm okay. Just keep smiling at me. I love it. No, I think your short list is great, but there's one person who I think you would work out with well. And it's one woman on the scene that I think, given the opportunity, if you two ever met, would be a dynamite intergender match. And I would have to say that would be Masha Slamovich. And the reason why I say that is because she is so tough. Her strength is just incredible. I've seen some of the stuff that she could pull off. I've watched her in the ring literally decimate opponents. And the whole time, she kicks ass, and she looks fantastic doing it. And because she's so stone cold, she represents that Russian, stone-faced moniker, I think you and her would play off so well against each other. So if there are any promoters out there, listen to the host when I say this, book it. Shut up and book it and take everybody's money, because that match would be something I would like to see. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
I definitely second that. I actually just watched a match of hers. I saw her beat the living hell out of Lil Blay, who's recently become a good friend of mine. And I remember watching that, and I'm thinking, I would love to wrestle her, but at the same time, I don't know if I want to wrestle her. it's a kind of a fear, excitement reaction. It was like, oh, this would be a really cool experience for the fans, but man, I would probably get my ass kicked.
And you know what, though? I would pay to see that. I'll be honest with you. I would pay 100% to see that. It's funny that you mentioned Little Blake, because I had him on the show. And when I interviewed him, he was fantastic. Great talent. I've seen him wrestle a couple of times. And I love the character. I love everything about it, much like yours. It's just a lot of fun. And but again, you both can handle your own in the ring. And that's what a lot of people need to realize. Character is character, but learning how to handle yourself in that ring is wrestling 101. And both of you can definitely do that. But when I interviewed him, I mentioned, I was like, what are you looking forward to upcoming? And he hadn't had his match with you yet. But he mentioned you. He's like, I'm looking forward to taking on the Hot Stepper. I'm ready to get into the ring. And he mentioned you. And I actually was able to see a clip of that match a couple days ago, right before we set this up. And I got to say, man, that was probably my favorite Little Blay match that I've seen thus far. I really want to tip my hat off to both of you in that one, because it was a great match.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I mean, I known about that match about 5 months in advance. So I have been really hyped up for it. And then especially when they announced it, I was like, okay, finally, it's getting closer. And, we definitely threw some shade back and forth. We were on a podcast. We were on the Alliance Pro Wrestling Network. At the same time, just throwing shots at one another. And, we did everything that we could to build up the match. And then, when it finally came time, I really felt like we delivered. And it was a lot of fun, mainly because obviously our characters are very similar. Like, I always kind of look at Lil Blay as the antithesis of me. Like, I kind of went more the, I guess, like Superman path as far as performing arts, while he went down towards more like the Joker. So it was more straight edge. He was more kind of rebellious. And so it's definitely one of the most colorful matches on the scene, I would say. But yeah, I mean, we did a lot of character stuff. We showcased our athleticism. I think that match too, I think, it's definitely one of my favorites, mainly because I really felt like I was starting to come into my own as a pro wrestler. And it was really the first opportunity that I really got to showcase everything I could do from an athletic standpoint. And at the end of it, he got the better of me, but we hugged it out. We did the damn dance together, and I believe a friendship has now formed from that.
And isn't that something special that you can, once you go into a ring, you throw all kinds of shade, you build up a match, you get in a ring, you literally throw each other around like rag dolls, you drop each other on it, like you said, padding, wood, and steel. You are exhausted by the end of it, but then you look at each other, and a brotherhood, a friendship is born out of that. I mean, that's got to be one of the, you don't see that too often. You see respect given in a lot of sports, but the most time that I see sportsmanship is really in the sport of wrestling.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's, I think especially as performers, we understand all the hard work and dedication that we put into this business to help not only ourselves grow, but for the whole business to grow. And so when you put on performances that are not only special to you, but to the fans, it really, it makes you emotional, just because you know what it's building towards, what it's helping, it's helping the business. And so it's kind of like you get that camaraderie from it. And so I 100% agree. Like, it's a business that, even though we work as individuals and we're our own product, at the end of the day, we're still a team, because at the end of the day, we're doing what we want to do, what's best for pro wrestling.
100%, man. I gotta say, the wisdom that you have, the way you carry yourself, it's fantastic. I think I'm gonna see your name in bright lights, even brighter than they already are, very, very soon. And we've had so much fun so far. We've talked cock, We've talked Little Play. We've talked we've talked great female talent on the Canadian indie scene, and actually the indie scene in general, because a lot of these women are kicking butts in the States too. But let's get serious for a second. I want to ask you a question because I'm intrigued about this, because I think you could probably answer this question stronger than anybody else. I look at the state of wrestling right now, and I look at this year alone and all the craziness that has happened from AEW coming on the scene and just blowing things out of water. All of a sudden I see WWE, changing getting off the couch, being lazy, into actually starting to give a shit again about their fans. And then I look at, Impact Wrestling and how fantastic they're moving forward with their product. I look at ROH. I look at New Japan Pro. I look at all these facets. I look at the indie scene that's just blown up with so much talent, and how honored I am to sit down and have a chance to talk to all of you guys and all of you girls that literally give your time to me every week on this show. But I look at some things as head scratchers still. We talked about Kofi Kingston. We talked about that build, how much they built it up for him to get that WrestleMania run. Then you look at 2 months ago, where they literally had him drop the title on a Friday Night SmackDown in 11 seconds to frickin' Brock Lesnar. Probably the most boring wrestler next to Randy Orton in the ring, because watching paint dry is more exciting than watching these guys. And I say this, Macrae, because it's the truth. And that's what I am on Straight Talk Wrestling. I'm straight up and I'm honest and I'm to the point. And these guys are two guys that have so much amazing ability in the ring, but they're just both boring. And I look at AEW and what they're doing, but the extremes they're going to. Like, did you watch Full Gear? Did you watch the latest pay-per-view that happened since when this interview will drop about a month ago? Did you watch that at all?
I did watch Full Gear. I was hoping my two trainers would make an appearance, but they didn't. That's okay. That's okay.
They'll get there.
But they'll be there. But no, Full Gear. Man, it was. AEW to me is something else. I mean, from Double or Nothing all the way to now, I've been nothing but impressed by what they're doing, and especially Full Gear. I mean, how much blood is Cody Rhodes gonna lose for this company? Like,
well, hey man, you gotta bleed for your company, my friend. You gotta bleed for your company.
It's literally blood, sweat, and tears for that man. When it comes to AEW, and it's phenomenal. But yeah, and then Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega was definitely a standout for me, just because it was unsanctioned, and we saw Jon Moxley get back into an element that he's very familiar with through his work on the independent scene, and something that he had stepped away from for so long because of
restrictions, you could say. Yeah, company restrictions, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and we saw Kenny Omega in an environment that we've never really seen him in before. And we're used to him having, more straight edge, 45-minute wrestling clinics, while this one was kind of, how many things in this building can I hit you with or put you through? And so it was very different. And that's what I like about AEW. It's different. It's a wrestling program. It's trying to give you the best wrestling possible with some of the best wrestlers on the planet. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Full Gear, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I did too. You're right. It was a great pay-per-view all around, 100% for sure. But I'm looking at the extreme situations that these guys are putting themselves in. I mean, every time you step in the ring, you're taking time off your life. There are always risks. And we've seen the risks firsthand. We've seen injuries happen. But I'm just talking about the extremes that AEW is going to, I think, to get that viewership, when I don't think they have to. The product's fresh, it's new, it's there. Don't get me wrong, I love the Jon Moxley-Kenny Omega match. I think that's a match of the year candidate, for sure, hands down. I'll never look at a mousetrap the same, 100%. But I'm talking about the extremes, and I'm talking about the peaks and valleys that we're experiencing this year. There's been so many highs, but there's been so many lows. And I think the state of wrestling, I try to do an episode once a year. I like to call it the State of Wrestling Address, where I sit down and get all the shit off my chest that I'm thinking about in this business. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Vince McMahon needs to go somewhere and retire, or possibly go to sleep and never wake up. And Triple H needs to take over. Needs to take over quickly, because NXT is flourishing, but WWE is floundering as SmackDown product and the Raw product, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that now, and you know why? Because every time I watch a Raw or a SmackDown, we're building up Survivor Series, but now that when this interview drops, Survivor Series will long be past, and I see the same thing. I see Triple H walking out there and bringing everybody that was brought up that Vince McMahon ruined and bringing them back to NXT. Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, he's taking them all, he's making them offers, and he's bringing them back. So this is where my question comes into you. When seeing all these pieces move and seeing all these things happening, seeing the extremes AEW is going towards, what's your thoughts on the year of 2019 as wrestling as a whole? As we get to the end of the year, when this interview drops, Christmas will only be 2 weeks away and the year will be over. So in terms of that, as we move into 2020, where do you think we can go from here in terms of the wrestling business?
Well, you brought up some very good points. How wrestling has definitely seen a lot of highs and a lot of lows this year, as is every year. But this year felt kind of special because wrestling, from my perspective, and I think it's mutually agreed that, especially independent wrestling, really only started to get this super high build over the past 2 years. And this year we have a new wrestling company that can compete with WWE on a financial level, and that's a huge step for wrestling, and everything that the company has done so far has been fantastic. And you're right. AEW is going to some huge extremes, but I think if they do it both as a way to show that they're different, but at the same time, I think they also kind of love it. I think that they could tone it down if they wanted to, but I don't think they want to. I think they like going at the speed. I think they love bringing all this action to it right away. Moving on from AEW, Impact is now on Access TV as of this year, which is absolutely phenomenal. As much crap as Impact is given because of a previously bad reputation over the years, Scott D'Amore, Don Callis, that whole group have spent the past 2 years really trying to rebuild the brand, and I think they've done it very well. And I think Impact is now going to be one of the top promotions in the world again. Is going to be seen and loved by many. And then WWE, I'll be completely honest, WWE is something that I don't watch regularly, and it's not because I'm not anti-WWE, it's just that there's times where there's better wrestling out there, in my opinion. Like, for me, it's subjective, where it's like, I'm only going to watch wrestling that appeals to me. And a lot of things at WWE don't necessarily, but I mean, I love going back. Like, I love watching guys like Ricochet. Ricochet is one of my favorites. Aleister Black, Buddy Murphy, Mustafa Ali, Daniel Bryan. Like those guys in particular, like I'll watch those matches because I know they'll have good matches.
Oh, don't forget about, for me, I agree with you there 100%. I don't watch WWE all the time, but my favorite guy right now is, I'm a big fan of the dark characters, man, and I have he doesn't know it, but I have a serious bromance with The Fiend. That guy's my best friend.
Oh,
I love that guy.
Yes.
When he came out, I was at SummerSlam, and when he came out, my 9-year-old daughter came with us. She's now 10. Light of my life, my oldest Cassandra. She came with us, and when he came out, she was so scared she was closing her eyes. Me, I looked like a kid who had just seen Santa Claus for the first time. I looked up, I had a big smile on my face. I'm like, I turned over to my wife. I'm like, babe, I love everything right now. This is euphoric. You know what I mean? And she's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, no, it's just the greatest fucking character ever. And I love the build. I understand the head scratcher of Hell in the Cell. I get why it was done, but it was still a very weird ending. But I love that now they put the title on him, and I love that once a character gets his own kind of name graphic and gets to design his own title, you know he's in for a very, very long title run.
I mean, I love the Fiend, especially because knowing what Bray Wyatt has been through as far as like how his character was built up so strongly, but then
Destroyed.
has been quickly buried because he's never won any of his major storylines. And again, like, I can't complain because at the end of the day, I'm not a writer. I don't make the decisions at WWE, but I mean, it's my opinion. But the Fiend, man, I don't know what happened to Mr. Rogers, but he just got fucked by the devil. Like,
we went from talking cock to now being ass raped by the devil. Where are we going here, Macrae? Where are we going?
I don't know. This is your show. I was just kind of contributing to your questions. But no, it's like when he came out as the children's TV show host, I was like, okay, there's a lot of potential for this. I really like it. And then the Fiend, I was like, whoa, what? Wait, what is going on? And the mask. Oh, the mask is. Oh, it's so beautiful.
It's sexy like, as hell, right? It's gorgeous. It is gorgeous. Right?
Yes. It encapsulates like everything about what Bray Wyatt should have been. Like that entity. Like you look at him as like that is an entity. That is not human. That is not normal. But then the fact that he still goes to the children's TV show host. It's kind of like when Kane. You know, he would be Corporate Kane unmasked, but then put the mask back on, except the extremities is much bigger. Like, you have a very innocent children's TV show host, and it's like, oh, I'm going to take 12 curve stomps and
get right back up.
Each and every single one of them.
Yeah. No, I think you answered the question beautifully. I think you hit the nail on the coffin. This year has definitely been that kind of peak and valley year, but I'm excited for 2020. I'm excited to see what comes to the table. And, you know, one of my favorite pay-per-views is just around the corner. I'm a big fan of the Royal Rumble. I always love the surprises. CM Punk is kind of back. He's not really back with WWE, but he is on a WWE show on Fox. So there could be a door opening there. Who knows? I mean, it would be nice to see another pipe bomb, but I don't think we're going to get that because there's a lot of mending of that bridge that definitely has to be done. That bridge wasn't only burnt, it was, a nuclear bomb was dropped on that bridge between CM Punk and WWE. But my next question for you is, let's go back to the dancing character for a second, because you mentioned how they're never really taken seriously. And you're obviously a face. I don't think I've ever seen you portray a heel yet. But given the circumstances of your character, considering that he is, the kind of fun-loving, dancing character, but he can also, handle his own in the ring. If the opportunity to play heel ever was presented to you, would you take that, or would you still want to ride that face wave for a bit?
I have played heel a couple of times, but only like as one-offs for small, very, very small promotions.
Right.
I would like to experiment with some heel work with my character. Like you said, like I'm face pretty much everywhere, and I'm riding the wave. I wouldn't be surprised if after a few years, the hot stepper gimmick gets a little boring. But that's how wrestling works, right? You're the talk of the town for a few years. Your popularity starts to die down. You got to reinvent yourself. You got to change things up. So I'm not afraid of change. I'd be more than happy to play a heel character if that's what would keep me relevant. And I have some ideas that I'm still working on. Thankfully, I have great trainers like Uno and Stu who have been in the game for a long time and have played characters their entire career to kind of help me go towards the right direction when that time comes. I kind of look at it as, I kind of just become more arrogant, be a bit more pompous, maybe less breakdancing, more classical forms of dancing, and being very, very elegant and slow with my movements. And I think if I just belittle the crowd, act as most dancers do, acting like they're better than everybody else, I think it would work.
So do I, actually. You know what? I didn't really see it that way, but yeah, you know what? Like I said, man, fluidity. You're killing it. I love it. So again, back to character. Obviously a big promotion is in the hopes, in the dreams for every wrestler that they go to. Let's be honest, WWE, you'd flounder. They'd probably stick you with Fandango or No Way Jose. AEW is a definite possibility where I think your character would grow. But you know where I really think you would shine? And I only say this because you're a proud Canadian, and they're a proud Canadian organization. Scott D'Amore and everything he's doing with Impact Wrestling, him and Gail Kim, bringing it up again, giving it that fire, that life. I think you would fit the mold well with Impact. And the reason why I say this is because there's so much talent there, man. Oh, I could see you versus Sami Callihan. You versus Tesha Blanchard. You versus Josh Alexander taking a chop from him and him breaking your chest. I could see you. I could see you touching Joey Ryan's dick. So I think. I mean, in my opinion, I think your character would flourish in an Impact Wrestling environment, and I also think a strong second would be AEW. But I'd have to see where they would place you. And I hope that they get another title in there soon because there is so much potential. Like, they need to give me something like an Impact title or like, a next-gen title or something like that. But what do you think on my thoughts? Am I far off, or am I thinking Impact would be a nice home for the Hot Stepper one day?
George, you completely read my mind. I was kind of preparing for a similar question of, where would I like to end up? And I was ready to answer Impact Wrestling. Because going back to what I said earlier, Impact has done so much to rebuild that reputation that they had from making poor mistakes in the past. And I've had the pleasure of working a couple TV tapings just as like ring crew and security. And I remember having so much fun and just talking to management, talking to the talent, talking to other wrestlers there. Getting to witness the production as a whole made me appreciate everything that they're doing even more. And I definitely think Impact is only going up. And I would love to be a part of that company and help it grow even more. And going on to what you said, all those people that you listed, Sami Callihan, Tessa Blanchard, another women's wrestler I love to wrestle or just talk about musicals with. I know she loves musicals, so do I. So I think we just have a time together. And Willie Mack is someone I love to wrestle. But you brought up a very interesting name, and that's Josh Alexander. And I've had the pleasure of tussling with Mr. Josh Alexander. And yes, his chops are no joke. They hurt.
I asked him to give me one. Every time I see him, I'm like, give me a chop. He's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, come on, man.
Do you hate yourself, George? I mean, I ask this genuinely. That man is so good in the ring. He's like so good.
Oh, yeah. When you name yourself the walking weapon, it's the damn fucking truth. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I first started watching indie wrestling, like my first show was a C4 show, and he was in the main event in a six-way for the title, and his presence, his look, his moveset, he's obviously very different from my character, but man, he still is one of my favorites, and sharing the ring with him was something very special for me.
Well, you know what? I have to take a look out for that match. I got to see if I can find that thing on YouTube. It's probably definitely worth the watch. And you're right, man. And I think that if you've had the chance to, if you've gone into a ring with Josh Alexander and you've lived to tell the tale, then my friend, you've already had a great career so far. And that's the truth of the matter. Well, Mr. Macrae, sir, this has been an absolute blast. I've had so much fun talking with you. I wish we could talk more. But you know what? I want to go upstairs and spend some time with the family.
Oh, of course. Of course. I actually, it's funny, we're talking about training and everything. I'm actually going to training after this.
Well, there you go. So I don't want to hold you up from training.
Moves.
Yeah, I don't want to hold you up from training. But I do want to give you an early Christmas gift, considering you're going to be my first episode in December. I want to give you an early Christmas gift. And the early Christmas gift is that you are now officially a part of the Straight Talk family. It's been such a blast talking with you. We're going to have to do it again soon. Anytime you want to get back on the show, you call me, or anytime you're in the GTA and I'm available, we're going to sit down face to face, man, and we're going to have another conversation because this was absolutely, I had a blast. I hope you had fun too.
Man, I had so much fun. This is only my second podcast ever, so you were a great host. Thank you very much. I can't even describe how much fun I had. This is just fun, just talking cock and shooting the shit and doing all that fun wrestling stuff.
Yeah, and if anybody from Impact Wrestling is listening, and I know a couple people in that organization, Scott Demore's a friend of mine on Facebook. We haven't officially spoken, but he's a friend of mine on Facebook. And I also know Ben Ortmans, who he runs Crossbody Pro Wrestling, but he also works very closely backstage at Impact Wrestling. And anybody who's listening, give this man a shot. Don't let him work ring crew. Don't let him work security. Put him in the ring, because this dude is something special. Macrae, it's a blast. Again, you're always welcome on the show. Thank you so much for taking up the time today. Go learn some more hot stepping moves. Go learn to kick ass better. Go learn to give a chop just like Josh Alexander. So the next time you face him in the ring, you could chop him just as hard as you did.
Oh, well, thank you very much, George. And I hope to do this again.
Absolutely. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Goodbye.
Bye. What can I say, guys? I love talking wrestling. There's nothing better than doing that. And when you're doing that with an up-and-coming talent like Macrae Martin, things are huge. Things are skyrocketing. This is a great way to get into the month of December. And I want to let everybody know now that I'm going to be dropping another 1, maybe 2 episodes. And then I'm going to be taking a much-needed Christmas break with the family. And I'll be coming back second week of January with another great episode, as I always do. So, as always, stay tuned to the socials. I'm not going to give you a hint for next week's episode. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. So, always follow the socials. Stay tuned. And as always, I'm your host, Jordan McKay. Thank you so much for listening. And take care. See you guys next week. Peace.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for another episode on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. Also follow us on Facebook at Straight Talk Wrestling, on Instagram at Straight Talk Wrestling, and on Twitter at _Straight Talk. And for all our merchandise, you can search us on ProWrestlingTees.com.